Imagine a time when airline meals were actually edible. Well, I'm Joe, this is Jet Age Kitchen, the show that transports you back to the golden age of jet travel, one delicious airline meal at a time.
Back then, a first class ticket didn't just get you legroom, it got you a multi-course meal with wine pairings, silver cutlery, silver service, and of course a lovely cheese trolley. Airlines used to serve dishes like lobster thermidor, a whole roast duck carved at the table, even soufflés, all at 30,000 feet. No foil lids, no plastic forks, and absolutely no chicken or beef. Each week I'll dig into vintage airline menus from the jet age and try to create the meals that made flying feel like fine dining. Most of the time they're delicious, but sometimes, well, let's just say there's a reason we don't serve jellied consomme anymore. So buckle up, stow your tray tables, and let's take off into the edible history of aviation.
Ready for takeoff.
In this video, we're going to step back in time aboard British Overseas Airways Corporation, the predecessor of today's British Airways. And this menu comes straight from the BOAC archives. It is an absolute thing of beauty. It looks too good to touch, but we're going to have a look and see what passengers would have been served on board this flight. And what I really like about this menu to begin with is it was served on the BA 107, which was the flight from London to Johannesburg. But as the aircraft didn't have the fuel capacity to fly straight from London to Johannesburg, it had to make a few stops on the way to refuel. And for the passengers, this meant a meal on every flight. Lucky them. So you can see on the London to Zurich leg, they were served lunch, Zurich to Nairobi, afternoon tea, then cocktails, then dinner, and then to top it off, on the final leg from Nairobi to Johannesburg, they were served breakfast. So let's have a look inside and see exactly what was on the menu. Pretty extensive drinks menu, but what I really like about this particular menu is just the simplicity. There's no descriptions, there's no added words, it just says what it is. A nice little wine menu here, and you can see all the wines from the kind of mid-60s, which would have been around about the time this menu was served. And then let's have a look at the kind of fare that was available. You can almost see how luxury this menu was to begin with. The first thing you can see is foie gras, Scotch salmon Bellevue, which had been caviar, nice kind of light lunch for that short hop to Zurich. And then the dinner menu, caviar from the Caspian Sea, smoked Scotch salmon, double consomme, very simple soup, but a very elegant, rich and luxury dish to be served. And then you've got veal, fillet steak, and finishing off with the lovely orange bavaroise. And that's what we're going to recreate today for you. I've chosen a few things. We're going to do fillet steak forestière, which is in a fillet steak in a lovely mushroom sauce. And then we're going to finish that off with a lovely light orange bavaroise and give you guys a taste of what would have been served on board this flight. And last but not least, breakfast, grilled ham with tomatoes, freshly scrambled or boiled eggs. It'd be interesting to know how they scrambled them on board the aeroplane. Rivita, very interesting. Fresh fruits, coffee and tea. What an absolute gem. Okay, right, let's get cooking. So to begin with, we're going to generously season our lovely fillet steaks with some molten sea salt and some black pepper. And into a screaming hot pan, we're going to pop the fillet steaks until they get a nice crust. For some added flavour, we've got some thyme and garlic in the pan, and then we're going to baste the steaks in some butter. We've done about 7 minutes on each side, and then we're going to pop them in the oven for 5 minutes and then take them out and let them rest. So for the forestière sauce, we're going to start with some hot butter and add the shallots, sweat them down, and then we're going to add the chopped up wild mushrooms and allow them to sweat down as well. Once they're lovely and soft, we're going to add some cream, and then we're going to add some tarragon, loads of salt and pepper, and so we've got a really rich, lovely sauce. For the rosti, we're going to grate 2 waxy potatoes that have been peeled. We're then going to blanch them in some hot water just for a few seconds before we drain and get rid of all the starch and excess water, so it's nice and dry, ready for frying. To the blanched and dry potato, we're going to add some thyme, loads of salt and pepper, and some clarified butter. Give it all a good mix. And then to a hot pan, we're going to add some more clarified butter, and once it's sizzling, we're going to spoon the mixture in. Once it's bubbly and golden, we're then going to flip it over and let it cook on the other side before finishing it off in the oven.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may now unfasten your seatbelts and smoke if you wish. We shall be serving you with cocktails and lunch and afternoon tea.
Let's get the tray table set up ready for the meal service. Really excites me about this particular era of travel is that there is no in-flight entertainment. The meal really took centre stage, so they would have taken a lot of time serving the drinks, serving the canapes, and a lot of the dishes would have been silver serves just to add to that dramatic effect. And what I'm serving everything on today isn't quite from BOAC, but it is from Concord, and the crockery that we've got from early 2000s Concord, I think just before it was retired. So it's quite small as well, just in case you think the portions look absolutely huge. But before we start eating, all good airline services, a lovely drop of beautiful red wine to complement the steak. Still all sparkling water. I don't know about you, but I always go for sparkling. I don't know why, maybe it just feels a bit posher. And because we are on an aeroplane, we absolutely must have a warm bread roll. I think it's sacrilege not to have one. And there we have it. So let's get our napkin on, ready for our beautiful steak forestière. So here we go. We've got the Concord plate adorned with the potato rosti which we made. Like the airline back in the day, we're gonna silver serve our beautiful fillet steak on top, nice skin in the middle, as they would have done back in the day for the drama, and like they would have all done at the top end hotels in London and Paris. Be very generous with this beautiful sauce. I think if I was a BOAC steward and I had to put a few dribbles on the customer's plate, probably would have been hauled in for some retraining, but I think as a start for 10 that'll do nicely. And just like the menu, we're going to complement that with some lovely green beans. So there we have it. That's steak forestière, like you would have got on a BOAC Vickers VC10 as you were jetting from Zurich to Nairobi. And we're going to give it a taste and see what it's like. I think one of the interesting things about steak on an aeroplane is how could they have cooked it as the passenger wanted. We've gone for kind of a medium rare here, but I need to do some more research to see if they had grills on board and they could have done it to the customer's liking, but I think medium rare is a pretty safe bet. Let's give this a shot. And the first thing that hits you is just the richness of that sauce, the woody, earthy mushrooms, the richness of the cream, and then we've got a lovely crust on that steak as well, so there's a lovely hit of salt and pepper, and then the beautiful meat. And below that, we've got this really, really crisp potato rosti. I mean, to be honest, I could just eat the rosti and the sauce on its own. Let's cut right into this steak and have a good look. Tiny Concord plate, not doing very well here, but never mind. Medium rare. Let's have another mouthful of this. No, such a rich dish. Classic French cooking at its best here. Because in the 60s and the 70s, these sort of menus being served. These were the type of dishes that were very popular. If you were going out for a meal in London, you wouldn't be going to Michelin star restaurants. You'd be going to like your Savoy, Claridge's, because that's where the top chefs cooked, and they got a lot of influence from their counterparts in Paris. So cooking a filet, a potato rosti, and the forestier sauce, they're all got a really big French influence, and the cooking techniques, again, really, really classic. For me, this is the kind of food that I really like. None of this gastro stuff. I haven't quite gone for a bottle of wine from the 1960s, but that's a really lovely Chateau Neuf de Pape to complement the wine. And again, the wine that they would have served on board, and the airline would have their own wine specialists and sommeliers and put really good pairings for the dishes that they had on the menu. That's an absolute triumph. Real 10 out of 10. For the orange bavaroise, we're going to start by zesting a lemon. We're then going to juice half a lemon and 2 oranges, reserving the rest of the fruit to segment and garnish the dish later on. Add 4 gelatine leaves to some cold water to soften. Whisk 250 millilitres of double cream until it's stiff. We're then going to take half of the juice, bring it to the boil, and add the strained gelatin and give it a good whisk. In a bain-marie, we're then going to take 4 eggs and give them a good whisk with the technique called Savignon until they're really light and airy. We're then going to whisk in 200 grams of caster sugar, and then add all the other ingredients. So the rest of the orange juice, the lemon zest, the orange juice that's been mixed with the gelatin, and finally, once that's cooled down, we're going to whisk in the double cream until we've got our mixture. We'll divide the mixture into moulds and then pop them in the fridge for at least 4 hours, but ideally overnight. Now it's time for the final course. And I think the meal's been rounded off really nicely with this absolutely stunning orange bavaroise. What we've done to garnish it is we've got some segments of orange and lemon, put that in a lovely syrup. When you look at the menu, bearing in mind, in the same day we've had a really rich lunch with fargois. We then had afternoon tea, which no doubt had sandwiches, cakes, scones with clotted cream. We then had our dinner, the main piece being that really, really rich steak forestier. I think a lovely little orange bavaroise is a nice way to round a meal off, because I don't know about you, but I can never, ever skip dessert. So I think this one's a particularly light one and was probably chosen on purpose. So let's give this a go. Nice texture there with the whipped cream, some orange on there. It's really light. We saw the work we put in with getting the eggs nice and airy, and that really pays off. It's got a bit of firmness with the whipped cream in, but it just makes it taste really super lovely. It's sweet and creamy, but then the sharpness of the fruit segments goes off really nice. This one's a bit of lemon, so let's try this one. Yeah, absolutely super way to round off an absolutely beautiful meal. And bavaroise again, French theme, you see? Actually, I said it'd be full, but I can definitely tell you I'd polish off at least 3 of these. For me, a nice pairing of dessert wine. Probably a black coffee. Undoubtedly you get petit fours. And then because it's a night bite, it would be rude not to have a little nightcap, like a lovely brandy to polish the meal off. Spot on, absolutely delicious.
If there's any airlines which you would like me to review, please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss the next episode of Jet Age Kitchen.